Greetings, class. Now we are moving into week 2, module 2, chapter 4, how to identify talent. So we talked extensively about managing talent in chapter 3. So in chapter 4, you're asking the foundational question, how to identify this talent. So imagine you're working in human resources in a company which has thousands of employees. Everyone is working hard, different departments, right? But are their employees driving the future of the business? The challenge for leaders is always to spot those individuals who are not only performing well today, but also have the potential to take the organization to the next level. This is where talent identification comes in. It's not just looking at the performance metrics today, but seeing the potential from a cultural fit and unique skills. So Google famously use a mix of performance reviews and peer feedback to spot hidden talents. Employees who might not yet be managers, but are showing creativity, collaboration, and leadership in informal settings. Another example of a company who meticulously managed the talent is GE. GE for decades ran the leadership development programs. They didn't just pick the top performers, they looked for those who are adaptable, who are curious, who have the resilience, who have the qualities that would allow them to thrive in unpredictable environments. So, talent, as we discussed, can also be niche. Considering a biotech company searching for specialists in gene therapy. So, even the employees managing the teams, the technical expertise can be so critical, they're also considered as like top talent. So identifying talent is not a one size fits all. It depends upon the company, it depends upon the industry, it requires structured process. It also heavily depends on the intuition and the foresight. That is why it's not perfect science. I have gone through many different processes where we mapped talent based on different kind of metrics. We applied intuition. It sometimes works, sometimes doesn't work. So as we delve deeper into these chapters, we'll explore different kinds of frameworks, tools, and perspectives that help organization not only recognize their high performance, but also identify high potential bearing talents. They become the future leaders and innovators for tomorrow. So when we talk about identification of talent, it has reached a level where it's not just a human resources theory. We navigated the time span from 1970s all the way today. Today, it's something leading companies invest millions into because it directly impacts their survival and growth. So take Microsoft. When Satya Nadella became CEO, he emphasized a growth and a learning mindset culture. Instead of identifying employees who were already top performers, Microsoft started valuing employees with curiosity, with adaptability, and the potential to grow into new roles. This shift meant that they could identify not just today's stars, but tomorrow's innovators, helping Microsoft regain relevance in cloud computing and AI. Another example comes to mind is Deloitte. So Deloitte is the best practice model that has been followed by many consulting companies. They have completely redesigned their performance management system to move away from the traditional annual reviews. Instead, they use the real-time feedback and potential assessments, which helps them identify high potential leaders much earlier. Deloitte realized that in professional services, retaining and fast tracking their best consultants is the only way they will be able to stay competitive in a talent hungry market. And then you have a totally different industry, Tesla. Tesla identifies talent very differently. For Tesla, as you may guess, speed and innovation are everything. They look for individuals who not only have the technical excellence, but also the ability to thrive in chaos. For example, engineers who can design, who can test, who can iterate the prototype under very tight deadlines are valued more than those who follow traditional, slower processes. So, this approach to talent identification, spotting those who can thrive under pressure, have been key to Tesla's talent rapid innovation cycles. So, across the industries, whether it's Microsoft nurturing the potential, Deloitte reshaping the performance systems or best practice models, or Tesla rewarding the agility, we say the same truth. Identifying talent is not about filling positions, it's about securing the organization's future. So, when we look at the talent identification process, every organization, irrespective of where they are, which industry they belong to, they need some specific steps. It starts with a clear criteria. Let's go back and reflect on Deloitte. Deloitte, as I mentioned, they moved away from traditional performance review and they began to use predictive analytics to identify hidden talent. Instead of just rewarding the loudest voices, they looked at consistent project success. They have collaboration scores and client outcomes. So their clear data-driven criteria allowed them to identify future leaders who might otherwise be overlooked because of so many criteria. So second, those criteria that you establish should be measurable. Amazon demonstrates this brilliantly with its bar racers program. You're racing the bar. In every hiring and promotion decision, Amazon brings in trained leaders from outside to measure the candidates against the company-wide standards. This ensures consistency and objectivity, making their criteria not just measurable, but repeatable across the globe. Third, you need tools to measure the talent consistently. Unilever embraced technology by introducing the AI-driven gamified assessments for global recruitment. So instead of just interviews, candidates played problem-solving games that measured their cognitive ability, their emotional intelligence, and cultural fit. So this tool not only reduced the hiring bias, but also helped them scale globally while still finding the right talent. Finally, organizations must communicate and apply these processes consistently. Mayo Clinic gives us a healthcare example. They didn't look at the clinical expertise when identifying leaders. They communicated that collaboration, adaptability, and patient-centered values were equally important. By consistently applying this across the departments, they built a leadership pipeline that reflected not just skills, but also organizational culture. So when we think about the talent identification process, it's not just creating a checklist. It's about building systems that are very clear, measurable, scalable, and consistently applied. So Deloitte, Amazon, Unilever, we talked about Mayo Clinic, all show us that when you get this right, you're not just hiring for today, you're preparing for tomorrow's success. So now let's move on to determining the talent criteria. So when we talk about determining the talent criteria, it's important to realize that this is not an HR checklist. It is a strategic choice that shapes the future of the organization. Those companies who do this well will not just say that we want good people. They define what kind of good aligns with their business strategy. So take Google, for example. For years, they have emphasized competencies such as learning ability and team collaboration as part of their human resource fabric. They discovered that being the smarter coder doesn't automatically make someone a best hire if they cannot adapt the, the culture, the cross functionality expectation, and the challenges that they are going to face in Google. By embedding competencies like adaptability and teamwork into the hiring criteria, Google ensured that they bring in people who thrive in their highly collaborative, fast-moving environment. Now let's take Netflix. Netflix's approach to talent is built on radical transparency. They openly communicated what is called as a star talent. A star talent is somebody who's going to take ownership, who will deliver results, and align with the company's unique culture of freedom and responsibility. Employees aren't left guessing what great performance would look like. It's clearly spelled out, making their criteria both transparent and actionable. Then we talked about Unilever. They're a global giant that takes a very collaborative approach to defining talent. Rather than leaving to human resource alone, they involve different groups. They involve executives, HR professionals, line managers, and peers in co-creating the different criteria. This ensures that what looks like an ideal corporate level actually makes sense in realities of local operations, starting from supply chain to marketing. Their leadership development pipeline is well known for producing leaders who can operate globally, but also understand the local nuances, because the talent criteria were designed with multiple perspectives in mind. So what's the lesson here? Google shows the power of competencies. Netflix highlight transparencies. Unilever demonstrate the importance of collaboration across levels. All three companies take totally different pathways, but the common thread is clear. Their talent criteria is identified with their own unique strategy, what can be measured, and what can be consistently applied. So when you are thinking about defining the talent criteria in your own organization, ask, are we looking at the same old skills, or are we intentionally choosing the traits and behaviors that will carry us toward our strategy? I'm positive that there is a significant amount of technology, intelligence, AI, everything packaged, which becomes next to any type of talent identification pipelines. So now let's look at the competency framework. So when we talk about identifying and nurturing talent, we ask ourselves, what makes someone truly effective in their role? That's the first question you ask. That's where the concept of competency framework comes in. I will tell you, many companies have competency framework. The big question is, are they applying those competency framework consistently in hiring, in reviewing the performance, in ensuring the growth in the organization or career map happens by these competency framework? It's no question that competency framework allows the organization to clearly define the skills, to clearly identify the behaviors, and set the attributes that drive success. So let's start with functional competencies. These are role specific capabilities. Think about a senior executive at Amazon. So their ability to analyze markets, innovate new services, negotiate partnerships, and delegate effectively defines their success. Without the strategic orientation and business insight, Amazon could not have expanded from selling books in those early days to today's cloud computing leader through the AWS platform. Similarly, customer orientation is also a key hire. Amazon's mantra of being the most consumer or customer centric company in the world reflects this competency in action. Now, let's take about the next one, behavioral competency. So imagine a bicycle with two wheels. The front wheel is the functional competency, where you have the expertise in the job that you are recruited for. Now you have behavioral competency, which is the back wheel, which is extremely critical for you to propel to the next step. And these behavioral competencies are softer, human-centered skills that differentiate leaders from managers. Let's go to Microsoft. Satya Nadella at Microsoft transformed its company culture. It's not just competition, it is technical innovation. It's a learning mindset. But how did he do it? He went through the cultural transformation, building empathy, collaboration, and resilience into the Microsoft cultural fabric. His focus, I would say his laser focus on inclusion and diversity created a culture of belonging, which in turn unlocked innovation across the teams. Once the teams are inspired, they operate free from fear, they are motivated, the rest, everything will fall in place automatically. Behavioral competencies like change management and talent optimization often determine whether an organization thrives during disruption or gets left behind. Consider what happened during pandemic. Many healthcare organizations had to pivot rapidly. Leaders who demonstrated resilience and action orientation kept their teams motivated and focused, irrespective of the overwhelming uncertainty that was going through the globe. So their leadership ability and ability to collaborate across departments, divisions, business units, communicate very clearly with the limited information that they have, maintaining the morale was just as important as their technical expertise or clinical expertise in medicine, in surgery, in radiation, and all the other aspects of the functional competencies that they are stars for. So the key takeaway here is competency framework should balance the two wheels of the bicycle. In order for the bicycle to be driven, to be taken from point A to point B, you need both functional competencies and behavioral competencies. A brilliant engineer may design a groundbreaking product, but without his or her ability to lead, collaborate, and adapt, their impact will remain limited. Conversely, a strong leader with interpersonal skills can take an organization forward, but there wouldn't be no strategic orientation that would inspire people and they would struggle to deliver the results. So the magic lies in aligning both and propelling forward along the direction by which the organization is being steered for. Now let's take a look at a question we would all ask. What are those characteristics that would help me define as a star talent? What would be the leaders or seasoned leaders or human resource experts would be looking for? So when we talk about star talent, we are really talking about the people in the organization who make an outsized impact. So in the performance review, there are different classifications. There are need improvement, then meeting the performance as expected, then occasionally going above and beyond, and consistently going above and beyond, exceptional performance. Unfortunately or fortunately, every employee wants to become exceptionally rewarded or exceptionally performing employee. But only very few employees, the top 5%, who deliver the results will go far beyond what is expected. These individuals combine multiple qualities that sets them apart. So first, self-awareness and emotional intelligence. Let's go back to Microsoft. When Satya Nadella became CEO, he emphasized empathy both in product design and leadership, the two wheels of the bicycle. His ability to read people and situations, his openness to feedback, helped transform Microsoft's culture into one of collaboration and innovation. Next will be values-driven and inspirational leadership. So consider Patagonia's Yvonne. Yvonne built the company around sustainability values, inspiring employees and customers alike. He thought both employees and customers are critical for the company to deliver value internally and externally. So this kind of values-driven leadership, it doesn't just attract the talent, but it retains them. It gives an opportunity for them to grow beyond what they can imagine for themselves. People always want to work for a purpose greater than themselves. That gives many people the fulfillment that they are looking for. Many times, not just in a paycheck, not just in a pat on the back, but to realize that our effort has been part and parcel of something bigger. Then let's take a look at the third one, strong interpersonal and decision-making skills. So think of Sheryl Sandberg during her years at Facebook. She was many times described as the bridge between Mark Zuckerberg's vision and the practical execution of teams. Her ability to navigate relationships and make tough decisions made her invaluable within the company. Yet another trait of a star talent is adaptability, agility, and proven track record. So Elon Musk, regardless of all controversies and negative perceptions, he consistently demonstrated this quality. Whether it is Tesla, whether it is rockets, whether it's AI with XAI, he's shown remarkable ability to pivot industries and very quickly establishing the leadership. Finally, the strategic perspective and project leadership. Let's be at PepsiCo. It's a classic example. She led a shift towards a healthier product lines before the consumer preferences made it urgent. Her foresight and ability to align projects with long-term strategy is what defined the star talent. Now, the different versions of these 5 key characteristics can be applied in your own job descriptions, in your own world. I took the classic example of the role model within those buckets as somebody who you can emulate for that particular. But a star talent is one where you have all of these different kind of talents in varying proportions, depending upon the company, depending upon the industry, depending upon the role that you are performing within the organization. So when you hear about identifying the star talent, it's not just about who is the smartest or most hardworking. It's about the combination of these deeper characteristics, emotional intelligence, values-based leadership, adaptability, and foresight that collectively drive the disproportionate success. Now let's take a differentiation between the performance versus potential. High performance always not equal to high potential. We know that only 29% of the high performance or high performers have the real capability or real potential to drive the organizations to the next step. Potential means your ability to adapt, your ability to learn faster, and your ability to mold into future leadership roles. It's more than how you are understanding your job description, how you are skillfully gaining the talent to master the current activities that you're doing and becoming a high performer. So measuring potential will go beyond the different performance ratings that exist today. You need to have different kind of tools and technologies to understand the emotional intelligence, the leadership growth potential, the ability to see strategy, the foreseeing capabilities by which you can drive through the challenges that has been in front of you. All of those are extremely important from in measuring the potential. But it always starts with a high performance. Performance is absolutely critical. You need both performance and potential to match and balance. You need to have high performance and you need to have high potential. So let's take a look at the different ways by which the talent status can be communicated. So there is transparency versus confidentiality, and there are benefits for both. Transparency brings in motivation and engagement. Transparency helps in being fair throughout the organization. You will have the shared responsibility for development. And it's very important that all of these are communicated and linked with the performance of that particular role and of that organization in totality. Now, one of the most practical and widely used tools for identifying and developing talent is this 9-box matrix. It's very simple, yet a very powerful framework where employees are plotted under 2 buckets. The x-axis for performance, ranging from low to high, and the y-axis for potential, from ranging low to high. So this allows organizations to see at a glance where their current high achievers are, who will become tomorrow's leaders, and who needs intervention and careful attention. Let's take a look at some examples. At General Electric, one of the famous companies who will go through this meticulously, it was Jack Welch's central point to understand his famous vitality curve. High performers with strong leadership, they had programs where they got groomed aggressively for top roles, while underperformers were either coached or managed out. This wasn't without controversy. They were in the mainstream media for a long time. Nevertheless, this process of the vitality curve created a strong leadership pipeline that allowed GE to dominate multiple industries for decades. Now let's take a look at PepsiCo. PepsiCo applied the 9-box metrics or 9-box plot, but they didn't just use to reward high performers. They also identified individuals in the growth employee category. Though these people are with a high potential, but inconsistent performance. They received targeted coaching and stretch assignments, whereby PepsiCo transformed many of these employees into high impact leaders, ensuring their global leadership bench stayed strong. Even though Google had different box metrics, not exactly the 9-box, but they used that approach to recognize that not every brilliant engineer actually leadership material. We have seen consistently those who are performing at one level, when you promote that person to the next role, they struggle. Sometimes they even fail. So it's vital to map employees. They were able to distinguish between potential and performance. And those maps would yield the high performance, high potential as a star talent. They will remain deep experts. And those who had the potential, they can transition into the leadership roles. So this helped the organization to avoid the common pitfall of promoting the top performers into management only to see them struggle. In many cases, the performance reviews that we do annually for a majority of the organization, there is nothing there from a potential standpoint. There's hardly anything from a potential perspective. It is all reflecting on the goals that you established and the characteristics, the job competencies, but nothing from a potential perspective. So, what's powerful about the 9 box is that it sparks strategic conversations. For instance, the conversation can be, where do we invest? Do we invest in developing our growth employees into a star talent? Do we retain our dependable performers who may not lead but provide stability? Or do we accelerate our star talent into executive roles? So it's a very, very interesting discussion based on fact, based on data, removing the bias, conscious or unconscious bias, based on the relationship established by decision makers with the different team members. So 9 box, I want to emphasize that it's less about labeling employees. That's not the objective. It is more about ensuring organization or companies are intentional in managing, developing, and retaining the right talent, aligning people decisions with long-term business goals. So similar to the 9 box, yet another tool is Drotter talent pipeline. So when we talk about building future leaders, this becomes a relied practical tool. Think of this as like ladders, or more seriously, gateways. A series of gateways where each step leads into new ways by which the employees would be able to advance. Typically, in many of the Drotter talent pipelines, there are 6 transitions. It will be managing self into managing others, from managing others to managing managers, from managing managers to managing functions, and eventually all the way to the managing the enterprise. So foundationally, it starts with managing self. If you're not able to manage self, meaning the leadership, the different competencies, the emotional intelligence, the awareness you have about yourself, if that's not calibrated, you cannot move into the next step of managing others. So once you completely manage yourself, meaning you're predictable in different situations, then you are ready to manage others. You learn from different team members, and then you will be ready to manage the manager. So in our institution, it'll be like leading self, leading teams, leading leaders, and finally leading the institution. So each stage of this requires not just more responsibility, but it requires entirely new skills. For example, let's take a brilliant engineer. The brilliant engineer excels in solving problems. When they are promoted as managing others, they will not succeed until and unless they go through a series of education, bringing in the skills necessary to understand different team members and lead those team members. They should also need skills of coaching, delegation, motivating others. And many times you would see, sometimes this particular brilliant engineer would enjoy doing this or will challenge themselves doing it. So they can make a conscious decision whether I want to go through this ladder or I want to go through that single pipe without going to the next step, advancing my core skills, capabilities, and competencies so that I still remain highly productive for the organization. A perfect example comes to my mind. In my department, we had associate analyst, senior analyst, and then manager, associate director, and director. And then goes executive director, vice president, so on and so forth. Now, when I was helping one of the employees go through the ladder, she reached all the way to senior analyst. And immediately she said, Ajith, I want to adapt my technical skills, both my behavioral and functional competencies, but I do not want to manage the teams. I do not enjoy listening to other people's problems. Neither I have the capability to motivate others. She was very open, transparent, forthcoming, which helped me to create yet another called principal analyst. So the principal analyst will have deeper expertise in analytical skills, can provide leadership to others, necessarily have the responsibility of managing other team members. So those conversations are very critical to ensure that the growth of the team members are aligned with the organizational expectations and those departmental objectives. Let's take a look at GE. GE built one of the world's strongest leadership pipelines. They used a systematic approach like Drotter's to prepare the leaders at each stages. Jack Welch, one of GE's most celebrated CEOs, well known, he passed through these stages, proving his ability at every step. Similarly, Procter and Gamble, P&G, widely known, they are also well known for growing their own CEOs, carefully preparing leaders internally rather than hiring leaders from outside. Let's take our classic example, Unilever. Unilever is a global company. They integrated always the talent pipeline into global leadership programs. They identify high potential employees early, rotate them across geographies, across the different functions, and ensure they are tested at each transition. Tested might be a wrong word to use. They are seasoned with knowledge, with learnings, with systematic education, and how they perform in their role during each of those transitions. The result is leaders who are not just technically sound, but globally adaptable. One of my close friends is from Unilever. That's why I used Unilever as an example. Over many years, I was able to learn the management philosophy and the global leadership program. So for every 16 months, he will be responsible for one geography, maybe 2 or 3 functional units or business units, and then he will be moving to another geography. So he has traveled around the world, Asia Pacific, Europe, the Americas, helping Unilever on different functional levels. And even personally, when I interact with him, his leadership presence and executive portfolio is very evident. Unless you go through a regiment like that, there is no book which will teach you all of these different competencies that in your belt. There's only so much you can learn from book, but the rest has to come from the experience. But the foundation of all of this is understanding how you help, which you can definitely learn, experiment, master, and bear that continuous learning mindset. Now let's talk about how the real value comes in when organizations integrate talent identification with the broader talent management system. So it's all about development, succession planning, and career management. Let me illustrate this with a few examples. We talked about GE's leadership development pipeline. We discussed that GE is known for identifying young managers, grooming them through their training center, and preparing them for the C-suite roles. So this integration of identification with succession planning, it's a steady stream of global leaders, not only for GE, but also for many of the Fortune 500 companies. What it looks like when identification directly feeds into development and career management. Let's take example from Google. Google uses an integrated human resources system where the recruitment data, employee performance metrics, and career aspirations are linked through people analytics. This allows HR to not only identify rising talent, but also place them in roles where they can grow while aligning with the organizational needs. The result is clarity, efficiency, and high engagement. We talked about Unilever's Future Leaders Program. Instead of treating recruitment, training, and succession as separate silos, Unilever integrated them. New hires are placed on accelerated development path with rotation across geographies and functions. This ensures that talent identification is not just about spotting skills, but about building those global leaders for future. Since I'm in healthcare, let's take a healthcare example. Cleveland Clinic comes to mind. Talent identification there is tightly integrated with succession planning for physician leaders. Identifying not only clinical excellence, but also leadership potential ensures that when senior leaders retire, there is already a well-prepared pipeline of successors. So the key takeaway is when talent identification operates in isolation, it risks being a one-off exercise. But integrated with the talent management system, it creates clarity for managers, it brings in purpose for employees, and the long-term growth for the organization. It's a win-win situation for employees, supervisors, managers, leaders, executive leaders, and for the entire organization. So, as we wrap up this chapter on identifying talent, let's step back and connect the dots. The truth is that talent today, it's not just the worry for HR. It's one of the scarcest and most critical resource for any organization to survive. So any company across the industries are experiencing what can be called as a talent drought. Even with thousands of job applications pouring in, finding that right individual with right competencies, both functional and behavioral, is harder than ever. When Elon Musk was scaling his company, he often emphasized that the difference between a good hire and a great hire mean the success or failure of the entire product launches. For Tesla, engineers with deep battery expertise or autonomous driving skills were incredibly scarce. Tesla was the real bottleneck, not just a capital enterprise. So think why we should need clear, measurable, and consistent criteria for identifying talent. Our essential components reflect on Google's hiring process, which relied on competency frameworks, very structured interviews, and behavioral questions to ensure the objectivity. So it's no longer about just the gut instinct. It is about transparent processes that can be applied at scale to ensure they're consistently hiring people aligned with the culture and strategy. So competency framework and tools also play a major role. We looked at the 9 box plots. We looked at how Deloitte revamped or completely resurfaced their performance management system, how they moved away from the traditional ratings to a competency-based approach where they evaluated employees based on real impact, potential, and growth areas. This shift allowed them to identify high potentials more effectively and reduce bias in the process. So in short, talent is scarce. The rules for identifying it must be clear and measurable. Competency frameworks forms the backbone of fairness, integration with the broader human resources, ensuring sustainability and transparency that can build trust that keeps the great talent engaged. So in short, identifying talent is not just a human resource exercise. It's a long-term business strategy for competitive advantage. Thank you, class. So in this week 2, there is discussion questions and activities. Discussion questions are due, the initial responses are due end of Thursday. The peer responses for each of those discussion questions are due by end of the week. And assignments are due by end of the week as well. Very exciting discussion questions and assignment. And I'm looking forward for an exciting, energetic class discussions. Have a great second week during the program. Thank you.